This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity Podcast. Today's discussion is banking job cuts, interest rate pauses, corporate defaults, and 7 other stories. And thank you for listening. So here's what we're looking at today. First, futures point up this morning. The markets point up somewhat this morning on the hope that the Fed will look past inflation uptick and not raise rates this session. Yahoo Finance has an article on this morning. Lots of discussions of it. Second, something we talk about often, corporate defaults hit a 15-year high in August. That's the latest sign that this tremendous, horrific mix of the government doing deficit spending that leads to inflation and the Fed having to raise rates to fight inflation has two parts of our government, for all practical purposes, very much at odds with each other in just incredibly difficult position that it's putting consumers, companies, and quite frankly, the nation in. What a challenging situation. Again, corporate defaults at their highest about in 15 years. One of the things we say often is debt kills families, it kills companies, it kills nations. Credit card debt's an all-time high, and as interest rates rise, that just makes people more fragile. So corporate defaults. The third story is Citicorp, Citi Capital, Citi, to cut jobs, reorganize management. The banking giants planning layoffs and a huge overhaul, Business Insider, and we'll see how that turns out. Another banking giant, Truist, which is a combination of a couple banks, came together a few years ago. There's a story, will Truist's $750 million cost-cutting plan be enough? And we'll see about that. The fifth story, which is another sign that the apocalypse is upon us and that our government is broken, is a story that goes as this. The headline is, the U.S. is playing with fire as oil reserves, our strategic oil reserves, plunged to a 40-year low, markets guru Larry McDonald says. And this was reported in Business Insider again. This concept that to fight oil prices, we're going to use our strategic oil reserve, which is really intended if we're at war and don't have oil, but being used just to sort of play with the inflation numbers is so political and so wrong, it's hard for me to even comment on. But it's another example of just our government being broken, both on the Republican and Democratic side. Oil prices hit a 2023 high as prospects for tighter supply grow. We're up to about $90 a barrel. Those start to be frightening numbers. A couple personal notes and thank notes. One, I was very thankful to speak yesterday to give a keynote talk at the Denver Medical Study Group on healthcare trends. What a great audience, and so nice to put some faces with names there. I also had the chance to stay at the historic Brown Palace Hotel in Denver. Been dying to stay here, and it's actually a beautiful place. Next, thrilled to speak Saturday at Priya Bathia's class at Loyola Law School, and again, on healthcare and business trends. Thank you to Priya. Priya is an amazing leader, so thank you for having me. This morning, we had a chance to report a podcast with two brilliant leaders from VMG Health. These included Deborah Rossi and Pam Diapuso on compliance issues, coding issues, how you fight denials, and how you work with payers, especially as payers amp up the arms race with more automation and more denials and so forth. We love working with VMG Health. We're forever thankful to Greg Kunzman and to Jen Johnson. And thank you to the Becker's podcast team, including Maddie Billings and Cody Budd, as well as Margot Vaselli. What an amazing team. Thank you very much. We're thrilled to see Nader Sammy on a Becker's Healthcare webinar today. And finally, a totally separate note, or two separate notes, David Feherty. There's a great book by John Feinstein, the great sports author, about David Feherty. And what a pleasure to listen to this story of David Feherty. What a fascinating person and a talented person. And lastly, we're thrilled to see record attendance at our Becker's Healthcare ASC Business and Operations and Surgery Centers meeting coming up in October. We have Rob Gronkowski, Mia Hamm, as well as Jason Selk speaking, as well as a ton of people from the surgery center community. Thank you so much. What a great meeting that should be. We're very excited about it. Again, the headline today, corporate defaults at a 15-year high, interest rates and deficit policy. What a mess those two things are in contrast to each other. Some of the big banks going through layoffs and reorganizing. That's a little scary as always. And again, finally, anytime you have a question for me, feel free to text Scott Becker at 766-5322. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity Podcast. Thank you.